Hey guys, hey Posse, how's it going? This is Brandon again. We're doing a special episode today. Um, I'm here with Adam. You may know him as Junk Shop Dog, the Japanese toy whisperer or Japanese wrestling toy whisperer. And we're here. I'm just going to interview him just about his background and also to announce that tomorrow, like the 5th, is it?
Today.
Today, okay. So today in Australia, but tomorrow in America, you guys will be able to go to your website, jugshopdog.com.
Yep, it'll be in just under 3 hours. So
All right, and that'll be the popy style Bruiser Brody with there's a matching pin and a hat and a shirt, right?
yeah. So we'll have the standard figure and a silver variant limited to 220, and then a bit of support merch with the hat, which I'm modeling here. I'm probably not the best looking model of all time, but giving it a go. And we got the shirt and the pin as well. So
Nice.
just something to make the postage from Australia worthwhile.
Nice. Is that the figure behind you?
It is, and I've got a loose one just for reference as well.
Very nice. And that was that popy style. Is that a specifically Japanese style of a figure?
It is. It is. So well before even the poppy figures of early 1980s, it's a very Japanese style to have figures in what's called soft vinyl, which Japanese people call sofubi, which is we've adopted that phrase as well. So wrestling figures in that style, albeit at a much larger scale, started in the mid 1960s in Japan. So it's a style that they've perfected in a way. Although those figures, they've got their little quirks about them through the molds and the painting, and they are kind of perfectly imperfect. But yeah, even today, like through Medicom and hopefully through us, people are still enjoying and collecting soft vinyl. And if you look at the wider Japanese toy market, there's still plenty of Godzilla and Ultraman and that kind of thing that's done in soft vinyl. It's very much it's a very popular and collectible side of the toy market in Japan, and hopefully the Western collectors continue to latch onto it and open their eyes to it.
Yeah, I remember that's the first, like, the major wrestling figure pod was the first time I heard about popy or poppy figures, and then I went to look at the eBay prices and I was like, oof. Is it one of those things again that people were just like, oh, open them, play with them, and are the Japanese big into keeping things mint on card, or is it mostly like, oh, we're just gonna play with them like with like old golden age comics, like no one kind of knew that the value was gonna skyrocket?
Very much so, because a lot of, or almost, I can't think of there being a collector's market at that point. So even now with both the poppy figures and the bullmark wrestling figures of the 60s, you'll often find them in very much played condition, to the point where a lot of them actually have kids' names written on them in marker.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, they were very much a toy, not a collectible. And look, finding information about numbers of runs and popularity of toys in Japan can be very difficult, both because of the language barrier and there doesn't seem to be a lot out there in terms of web content. But as an anecdotal kind of viewpoint, a friend of mine who was a child at the time of the poppy release and was very much into All Japan Pro Wrestling in Hiroshima, he had never heard of them until I told him about them. But by the same token, they obviously they do bring back memories because of as evidenced by the prices that they get on eBay, and the aftermarket in Japan is, in terms of the prices, are not much different to eBay.
Oh, okay. So no matter what, like if you flew to Japan and like tried to find like a collector, it would still be like close to $1,000 for like an Andre or.
Yeah, particularly Hogan. I mean, that
Uh,
one's kind of universal in its price.
and then that
Um,
was his first figure, right?
well, it's actually kind of a point of contention whether you consider, and we'll be able to show one in real life in the next couple of weeks on our Instagram. A company called Nitto um, put out a Hogan, and it was just Hogan. He was much larger. Um, he was one color. He was a flesh color, and collectors were actually encouraged to paint him. So paint him the colors
Oh.
that you want. And so I think that may have come out first, whether you call that a statue or a figure or, you know, or whatever. I think that predated the poppy by a very small amount of time, but and it is in the same style of the poppy in the sense that it's got his the the Ichiban insignia on his tights, and the expectation is you paint his tights black and his boots silver.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because everyone would assume like before I really got into like wrestling figure collecting, I was always a wrestling fan since like elementary school, but then I was never into the figures as much. I was always like comic books, superheroes, and then I watched wrestling and got the t-shirts. But with that kind of stuff, I would have said LJN was his first figure until I really started getting into it. Then I'm like, holy crap! Like he had figures like 15 years or 10 years before 85. You know?
Yeah, and although it's fair to say, given the old wives' tales and the rumours about the size of those LJN royalty checks, that explains a lot in terms of why we know the LJN a lot better than the poppy too.
Yeah.
Because I
And
don't think the guys ever actually got paid for doing that poppy line initially.
no, probably not. I mean, back then they were just like I don't think they were thinking of like at least the wrestlers weren't thinking like, oh, should I be making money off of this? They were I feel like they were busy getting paid, like trying to get paid by the promoter, like
Not at all.
for
And
wrestling.
I guess that's something. Even today, when we were sorting out the the royalties for the Bruiser Brody figure, Mrs. Goodish actually told us that the Cara Pro, which has been discussed
Oh
on the
my God,
podcast,
yeah, that.
we do our best to try and procure as many as possible. She never saw a cent from that.
Mm. So they just never paid any of their like him, Hanson, Tiger, like all of them just,
I'm not sure about the others,
or
but I
maybe
know
because he was an
Brody
American.
paid for.
Yeah. So you're obviously a huge Japanese wrestling fan. Was that how you started, or did you start like most of us with WWF and then like I'm not too familiar with the wrestling scene in Australia and New Zealand and those areas. Is that was it did it boom in like the 80's and 70's or was it always kind of like an underground?
Oh, not at all. In the 70s, it was the World Championship Wrestling territory, run by Jim Barnett, was very much part of the mainstream in Australia. Much like your territorial wrestling of the time,
Mhm.
they had a program on every Sunday afternoon on Channel 9, and it was very much part of popular culture. Obviously, by the time I was around, that had well and truly died out, and the WWF rock and wrestling boom was as alive in Australia as anywhere. I was still a little young for it. It quietened down around the 90's, and I think if you talk to a lot of Australians, there was the Survivor Series '98 where the tournament for the
Yeah.
championship that actually played over summer on free to air, and I think that's where a lot of people either caught on or regained the wrestling bug, because for whatever reason everyone seemed to be home that Saturday night and seemed to catch it, and that being late '98, we're already into that attitude era, and obviously we we caught the bug like a lot of other people. I a lot of my wrestling fandom as a teenager started from there. but always had a desire to find out what else was there. And much like a lot of wrestling fans at that time, I was trading tapes, and from WWF tapes, you get ECW tapes, and then Japanese tapes, and you wonder who this Tiger Mask guy is, and why did he wrestle Dynamite Kid? I thought he was one of the British Bulldogs or whatever, and you get these fifth generation grainy tapes of old New Japan and All Japan shows, and it kind of goes from there.
Oh, okay. So that's I was going to ask if that's how you got into the Japanese side of it, was by tape trading. I never got into that because my friends were like, we all got swept up in the Attitude Era, and then by the time people started fading out, I was still a wrestling fan, but I didn't know anybody that was like a hardcore wrestling fan. So I would just read the PWIs and the all the magazines that came out, but I would never trade tapes. Did you have issues doing it? Because with international and stuff, like with certain VCRs, like did you have to have a special VCR for some tapes?
No, because there was enough locals trading tapes.
Oh, okay.
And because maybe they saw us coming, there was always tape players with NTSC playback. So all of those old best matches of 1994 from High Spots, and the best of Great Sasuke and that kind of thing, they'd all play on our VCRs. So there was enough locals to procure tapes from. But by the same token, those $10 High Spots compilations would work. So I played the hell out of a few of those.
Nice. So you're a big wrestling fan, tape trader. What other like collectibles or nerdy things did you like? Were you a comic book guy, action figures?
Played with toys like any other kid, but in terms of collectibles, I think I caught on to the basketball card boom in the early 90s as well. I've still got most of them, so I definitely have hoarder tendencies. But in terms of wrestling figures, I didn't catch on actually until I was an adult. Through all that tape trading, I'd watch a lot of old WWF, Coliseum videos, and you'd see those ads for the Hasbros, and they were long gone from stores. But I thought, oh, geez, I know I'm probably too old for toys, but geez, they look pretty cool. I'd like to have a few of those up around the house, and I think a lot of people, once they get their own, income and place to display them, that's where you start to, tap into that. And the first figure in my collection was a 1-2-3 Kid Hasbro. I think I bought about 15 years ago.
Wow. You got a 1-2-3 Kid Hasbro, and you got it like great as the you got it at the right time. I feel like
$60 it cost me at the time.
Yeah, compare like add a zero onto that, and now you have
exactly.
Good gosh, so that's cool. So that so you weren't too much of a figure guy until you started seeing the Hasbros. Like, so was that like early 2000s, late 90s, or?
Yeah, it was almost mid 2000s.
Okay.
Just being at a school and having a bit of money to play with.
Gotcha. So then that's kind of what's like, once you started having like disposable income, you started being like, you started getting into like the figures, the Hasbros. Did that lead you directly to the Japanese figures? Like once you started getting into the wrestling figure community?
No. Well, believe it or not, I did visit Japan in 2007. I needed somewhere. I'd never been overseas and thought I could, meet some friends over there and go to some wrestling shows, which we did, and it's great, and I highly recommend it.
Nice.
But and as most people do when they go to Japan, even then, that was 2007. You make the pilgrimage to the New Japan store. It's not far from Korakuen Hall, and I thought, oh well, I better buy something. I can't go all this way and come home empty-handed. So I bought what we now know as the articulated Kara Pro figures. So I think they're 3 3/4 inch, or people call them the G.I. Joe style figures. And I bought one of Liger because that's what was there. And it just kind of sat on display for almost 10 years before I really got into Japanese figure collecting.
Oh, okay. So it's been fairly recent that you've been.
Yeah, and it was. I did start to expand the Hasbro collection and thought, I'd really like to get into this, scouring the earth and wide for the Hasbros that I was looking for, and I happened upon some Japanese figures, the Kara Pros, and I thought, oh, geez, these are pretty cool. And there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of either wrestlers that performed in the West or Western performers that that were famous in the East, like Hanson and Brody and the Funks, and it started to collect a few of my own, and found out through some groups on the internet and that people were actually interested in these, and started to amass a bit of a collection, buying big lots from people and auctions, and started to sell them off to try and subsidize my own figure habit, which proved difficult, trying to find the people. And that's when my wife, my partner in crime in this junk shop dog venture, said, well, why don't you start an Instagram? Everyone's selling stuff on Instagram these days, no eBay fees. And that was about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago.
Oh, okay. So that's cool. So you and your wife run, like, does she help, like, is she full in on the store with you, or she just kind of gives you help when you need it?
No, she's much. I mean, she's very social media savvy. She's very creative. She's learnt to love wrestling through living with me. To the point where I took her to her first Korakuen Hall shows about this time last year, and she enjoyed it so much she wanted to go the next night. So she really steered me through the early days of Instagram. Always pushing me to add that professionalism. You'll probably be familiar with the carpet and sideboards that are always in the backgrounds of the photos.
Yeah.
On the Instagram, and she's pushed pretty hard to get rid of that. It doesn't, tells me it doesn't look professional enough.
But it's a brand.
Yeah, so there'll be no more of that. And yeah, she's really good in terms of what looks good graphically.
So she has an eye for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And what she's definitely got a finger on the pulse in terms of what's cool and what's kind of people just not necessarily on the mainstream, but just on the outskirts of popular culture are into.
All right, nice. That's cool that you two are able to do that together, and she can kind of give you advice, and that she's become by proxy a wrestling fan through osmosis.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's circle back to the Bruiser Brody figure. So I mean, for people who don't know, who aren't wrestling fans, Bruiser Brody was a huge star in Japan and Puerto Rico, and in like the Midwest of the United States to like from like Minnesota to Texas, but he was never like a WWF guy or a WCW guy, really. Like he had a cup of tea, I think, in there, right? But he never, he was never like pushed to be like the next guy. Like he was supposed to be pushed against Hogan.
It's a story that even some very good sources say it's true, that was to be kind of his last hurrah, his chance to make that big earn, and at that point he could be happy and spend time with his family, and that's the legend, and there's some pretty good sources that haven't debunked that theory, but yeah, I think he's. There were times. I think there was even a few WWF appearances, but yeah, he's still looked at so fondly in Japan. Still, I mean, the news of his death was on national radio and TV, and this was no small thing. This was a big time sportsman passing away.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still looked upon so fondly. yeah, he's still very much a legend over there, as evidenced by not just we've had a great reception to our figure. We've sold it through Hao Ming, the T-shirt store over there, but
yeah, they have a lot of masks and stuff too, right? Oh, they do gear too.
They
Or do they
do.
sell gear?
No, they do some gear design. I think probably most notably through with Kenny Omega.
Mm-hmm.
But their main thing is T-shirts. So
Okay.
they've got WWE licensed stuff, AEW licensed stuff, a lot of legends. That there's a Brody shirt there, Destroyer, and their Japanese legends like Riki Choshu, um, Tenru Inoki, those kind of guys. You'll see them a lot, and they have a lot of their own kind of. They are very much a fashion brand, as well as straight merchandise. So there are things that aren't necessarily licensed, but they're Hao Ming branded, and they've got some really cool stuff.
Nice. So hopefully people can check that out. I know you've tagged them a couple times on your page, so check out at Junk Shop Dog on Instagram, and then is it the same as Facebook?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It's Junk Shop Dog on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay. So Junk Shop Dog across all platforms. But also, whose idea was it to do the Brody figure, and then how hard? Like, what was the process reaching out to his family?
Well, believe it or not, I'd been in contact with Mrs. Goodish before. She was. We'd been talking on Facebook, and this is even before the idea of the figure came about. Just mutual friends. Really enjoyed some interviews she did with Fumi Saito, who was also a great help on the figure in terms of helping us with the images, the photographs. But they did a great interview on his Pacific Rim podcast with Jim Valley. And I just dropped her a line and introduced myself. I was living in New Zealand at the time, and I knew she was a Kiwi. She's from she's got the same hometown as my wife, Dunedin in the South Island of New Zealand. And we just started a chat, and I asked her about the figure releases and merchandise that she'd done in Japan, because obviously that was a point of interest for us. Mm-hmm. She, to this day, it's probably a point of contention, but she's never received any royalties for anything that's being done in Japan up until 2020. And at that point, we were, pardon the pun, but toying with the idea of this figure, and I just, rather cheekily or showing a bit of front, just said, well, how do you feel about a figure that you do get paid for and is in the Japanese style? And yeah, I from a cheeky proposal, she could not have been more helpful. She's been really supportive, and it's not just, hey, how's that figure going? It's, we talk about her time in New Zealand. She lived in Sydney, in Australia for I think nearly 10 years, which, where we live now. So there's a lot of common ground there, and it's not just a business relationship. She's just a really lovely person, as a lot of people in wrestling can attest to, because I know she definitely has a presence at the Cauliflower Alley and
that's good. That's rare to hear, just because you would, like, most people would, out looking in from the outside, would think, well, the wrestling business took her husband from her. Like, he was literally stabbed in the locker room. Like, it would be kind of hard to still stay with that, but I guess it seems like with his death, a lot of the wrestling community came together.
Yeah, and I think it's a credit to what a positive person she is.
Mm-hmm.
For that to happen is obviously, more horrific than words can say, but I think she certainly sees herself as having that family. I know she's very close with with a lot of Frank's contemporaries like Stan Hansen. So she's and even people in the podcast group like Roy Lucia, I know is very close to Mrs. Goodish. So she really is engrossed in that fraternity, and I know she definitely enjoys the camaraderie and friendship that she has with people in the wrestling business.
All right, that's great. Like that, I love hearing these kind of stories where it's like something so horrific happened, but then they, there's so much love that happens after. Like, there's no like bitterness after. It's just like, this is unfortunate that happened, but we still consider you part of the wrestling family because you were, you're his wife. You're Bruiser's wife.
Yeah, and rather selfishly, that's part of what she's basically the epitome of what we really enjoy out of this process, and hopefully we can continue to say, should there be future releases, that to this point we've really enjoyed dealing with these people. There's other releases, watch this space, where we've been dealing with family members of wrestling legends, and they too have been really lovely people. So long may that continue.
Andre?
Oh, I think there might be some contractual stuff there.
Yeah. I forgot to still have Andre locked up in a contract for a Legends contract till the end of time.
Yeah, that might be a toughie. But
we masked El Machina.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
But that got a Mattel release as well, so who knows whether that's copyrighted as well. But look, that we've got a wish list, as long as my and your arms combined. But I guess, and if you are looking to get that poppy style figure of a wrestling legend, we'll support Brody and we'll do what we can.
All right. So last thing, what is your holy grail in your collection that you have so far, like your current holy grail? And then plug all your socials, plug the website, and I'm going to put it all in the description too.
Cool. My holy grail of my collection, I'll send you some pictures afterwards if it helps, but it's a Bullmark Giant Baba, the JWA figures from the 60s, which I picked up in Japan about a year ago. The one I'm really looking for, I need an Antonio Inoki to get one step closer to completing that set. So if anyone's got a decent one, drop me a line and we'll see what we can do in terms of trade. So about 10 a.m. This morning, so 2 hours and 20 from now, the Bruiser Brody launches on junkshopdog.com. So that is the launch of the site. So you won't see anything until then, but the site will launch on the dot. And we've tried to give as much information as possible about the supporting items on our Instagram at junkshopdog, Twitter at junkshopdog, junkshopdog on Facebook. Look, particularly on Instagram, shoot us a message. We try to talk to everyone as best we can, and make friends, enjoy this journey of collecting together, and try and get people interested in the Japanese side of figure collecting, because there's some really cool stuff and some really quirky stuff that probably you may not see in the bulk releases of WWE and WCW and the like.
All right, that's awesome. Hopefully we get some awesome legends down the line. I think this is going to sell out pretty quickly. I'm hoping that it doesn't, so I have some time to get it. But always great talking to you, Adam. And I will see you in the Facebook group. All right, guys. Peace out.